In this movie, we're going to be talking about border radius. Border radius was one of the most sought after and celebrated properties once it landed in the CSS specification. Luckily, we can generally use it these days. Browser support is pretty good. You use it by typing border radius 5 pixels, or whatever measurement you'd like. Now, if you want to follow along with me, you can open up border1.html in your working files folder. I've commented out all of my border image stuff, and I've brought back the original border. When I type border radius 5 pixels and I refresh, you'll notice that there's now a 5 pixel roundedness on these borders. I'm going to make it a little bit more pronounced so it's easier to see. Now the radius of the roundedness is 15 pixels, and now we have rounded corners on our div. It's that easy. Now I'm sure a lot of you remember that before we had border radius, we had to do this with images, which meant that we spent a lot of time in Photoshop, we had to make assumptions about the background color, and it was a pain to maintain. Inevitably, we had more elements in the document than we actually needed, because we wanted to add the rounded corners. So border radius makes this very easy. If you look at Can I Use, you'll see that border radius used to require the WebKit and the Moz prefixes. If you click on Show All Versions, you can see all the way back to Firefox 3.6, Chrome version 4, and a couple other browsers. Because this specification solidified early on, we generally don't need that WebKit or Moz prefix. Now, if you look at the Mozilla Developer Network page for border radius, you'll find that there are actually a lot more things that we can do. Border radius, just like the border property, is actually a shorthand. It's a shorthand for border top left radius, border top right radius, border bottom right radius, and border bottom left radius. Generally, when we add rounded corners, we want to add the same rounded corners to all the corners. That's why there's a shorthand property. Aside from that, you can still apply different border radiuses to different corners using the shorthand, just like you can do margins with the margin shorthand. If you say border radius 15 pixels, 40 pixels, that's going to set the top left and the bottom right to 15 pixels, and the opposite corners to 40 pixels. If you set 15 pixels, 40 pixels, 0 pixels, it's going to be the top left getting 15, the bottom left and the top right getting 40, and then this one getting 0. Now, this seems a little difficult to remember, but if you can remember how the margin and padding shorthand rules work, just take that and rotate it 45 degrees counterclockwise. Border radius behaves the exact same way, just rotated slightly to the left. Now beside that, you can even set different roundedness for the X and the Y dimensions. This is pretty exciting. If I say border radius 10 pixels, it looks like this. Actually, I'll make that 20 so it's easier to see. Now I can say border radius 20 pixels / 50 pixels. That's going to set 20 pixels for the X and 50 pixels for the Y. And now you can see I don't have as much of a roundedness in this dimension as I do vertically. I can even say 50 pixels, 50% vertically. Now as I resize this, you can see that the horizontal is always going to be 50 pixels, even though the vertical is a percentage. If this div gets taller, it's still perfectly round up to this point, and then round in the other direction going onward. Now, one thing that you do have to think about with large border radii is that text and other things inside will actually stick out of them. If this is what you'd like, that's fine. If you'd like to hide it, you can set overflow to hidden. If you set overflow to hidden, anything that goes outside of the bounding box, well, in this case, it's really a curved box, will get cut off. If that's also not ideal, maybe you want to rethink using border radius with such high values.